Pete Hegseth is one step closer to the Pentagon. President-elect Donald Trump's pick to be the next Secretary of Defense is sitting before the Senate Armed Services Committee, where the senators are considering whether to confirm him.
Hegseth has been under intense scrutiny since being nominated in November because there were allegations of sexual misconduct around him.
Hegseth's mother had written an email to her son in 2018 accusing him of mistreating women, but she later defended him in a Fox and Friends interview and said the email, which was then obtained and published by the New York Times, had been sent in haste. She says that Hegseth is a redeemed and changed man today.
Trump also stood by his pick after the allegations surfaced.
In his opening statement, Hegseth said he hopes to build a warrior culture, making the case that having an untraditional background from secretaries of years past is actually an asset.
There was an eventful interruption to the proceedings, however. Let's watch.
Members of the security force will remove members.
Democratic Senator Jack Reed grilled Hegseth on his past DEI comments.
Let's listen.
However, the DEI policies of today are not the same as what happened back then. They're dividing troops inside formations, causing commanders to walk on eggshells, not putting meritocracy first. That's the indictment that's made by those serving right now.
Excuse me.
And why we're having this conversation.
All of your public comments don't talk about meritocracy. They talk about liberal democratic efforts that are destroying the military, that those people are our enemies. That's not meritocracy. That's a political view. And your goal, as I see emerging, is to politicize the military in favor of your particular positions, which you've outlined extensively, which would be the worst blow to the professionalism of the United States military.
Things got a little more heated when New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen got her turn.
Shaheen asked Hegseth why his comments on women in the military seemed to be contradictory.
And you say that women are not competent, they make our military less effective. And on the other hand, you say, oh no, now that I've been nominated to be the Secretary of Defense, I've changed my view on women in the military. What do you have to say to the almost 400,000 women who are serving today about your position on whether they should be capable to rise through the highest ranks of our military?
Senator, I would say I would be honored to have the opportunity to serve alongside you, shoulder to shoulder, men and women, black, white, all backgrounds, with a shared purpose. Our differences are not what define us. Our unity and our shared purpose is what define us, and you will be treated fairly and with dignity, honor, and respect.
Hegseth further clarified his views on women in combat when Senator Tom Cotton was questioning him.
Let's listen.
Let me read a quote here from one Army officer. While it may be difficult for a 120-pound woman to lift or drag 250 pounds, the Army cannot artificially absolve women of that responsibility. It may still exist on the battlefield. The entire purpose of creating a gender-neutral test was to acknowledge the reality that each job has objective physical standards to which all soldiers should be held, regardless of gender. The intent was not to ensure that women and men will have an equal likelihood of meeting those standards. I assume, based on your testimony, you agree with that Army officer?
Absolutely. The standards need to be the same, and they need to be high. And they need to be set by the people closest to the problem set, closest to the understanding of what is required by that job.
Well, it sounds to me like he's addressing that criticism of him. I agree with what he's saying there. There need to be rigorous, important physical standards for whether you serve in combat so that we can be, other people are relying on you, so we can't just have it be, you know, we feel pity for someone and we want to lower the standards and include them. No, they have to be very rigorous standards. And if women can satisfy them, great. There are certainly roles that, and then there are other roles besides serving in combat. You can still serve your country in a non-combat role. There are all sorts of roles associated with it. If women can pass that bar, that's fine. But we're not going to lower that bar so that more women can pass it. Whatever it is determined to be is what it's going to be. I think that's what I agree with. That's what I was hearing from him. I think probably most people think that's reasonable.
They may well think that's reasonable. I do think he has very obviously finessed, at a minimum, his views on women in combat, which he was previously rather emphatically opposed to, and swiftly changed position, or at least modulated that position soon after being nominated, obviously believing that it would endanger his nomination if he held fast to the more incendiary views he previously had. Now, I gather the hearing also included him being asked, and the control room will correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was Senator Ernst who asked him whether he would support her efforts, which were about countering or combating sexual abuse in the military. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York has also worked on that, and Hegseth said he would support that, which is I think,
of course,
praiseworthy and good for him. There are broader debates about Pete Hegseth. We have discussed previously. There's an allegation against him, or was an allegation against him, and he settled a claim from a woman who said he had sexually assaulted her. There were no criminal charges pressed in that case. He says that he settled the case in order to protect his television career. One reason I mention it is, even before today's hearing, we saw Democrats complain that the FBI background check into Hegseth was not as extensive as they believed it should have been. Apparently, one of his ex-wives, I think he's now on a third wife, one of his ex-wives wanted to talk more to the FBI and couldn't get her calls returned, according to one newspaper report this morning. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut apparently asked today whether Hegseth would be willing to submit to an expanded FBI check, and Hegseth declined to commit to that.
Look, I think he's going to be confirmed with very little problem. The only thing that would indicate that's not going to be the case is if we hear some Republicans still expressing reservations. Joni Ernst had expressed reservations about Hegseth, and I think she got incredibly negative treatment from conservative media. This is someone, I mean, he comes from conservative media, so maybe that's an advantage he has. There was not as much interest in pulling or dragging Matt Gaetz over the finish line. There is interest in dragging Hegseth over the finish line. This is seen by, I think, by Trump and by many in the MAGA movement as a very key role they want filled by this person, and I don't think any Republican senator is going to cross Trump on this. I haven't seen any indication that they will. It could happen. I'd be surprised, and so I think he will. Don't think he'll get any, perhaps zero Democratic support, but he will pass.
Do you think all of Trump's nominees that are still standing will now pass?
Yes, I do think that. I think Matt Gaetz would have had trouble, and so that one, he withdrew, so I don't know if it counts as a thwarted nomination or not, but I think the rest of them are going to get through. RFK Jr. Would be interesting, but I'm mostly hearing, because on that one you could theoretically see some Republican support and some Republican lack of support because he's pro-choice, and some of his views on even food and nutrition and the new requirements and regulations are not particularly conservative. And then on the Democratic side, he is a former Democrat and has Democratic friends and a Democratic name, but has also made a lot of enemies with Democrats. So that one will be interesting to watch, but I think it will end up tallying that there will be plenty of votes to approve him. Same with Tulsi, same with Kash Patel, but we'll find out.
Yeah, we will. I mean, Gabbard to me is also, Tulsi Gabbard's a very interesting one, because I think that she, I've my issues with her positions on some things, but she clearly does not represent what was once the orthodox, Republican hawkish position. She is a former Democrat, after all.
Yes.
And so I would imagine that there could be a theoretical possibility of splitting off one or two Republicans, but I'm not seeing a concrete sign of it, or much concrete sign of it. And to your point, I think Republicans, even in the Senate, which has been more of a stronghold of Trump skeptics, are reluctant to cross him after he has, won re-election again.
Yes, but we will be paying up close attention to other hearings, and we will check in with those later. Up next, latest bromance is Trump and a popular Democrat, or a Democrat that's popular with non-Democrats. We'll tell you who it is. Stay tuned.